you teach us to love everybody the same, but yet they can't marry in the same. Like they have to marry within this, and this. It never made sense to me. Um, it was actually found out that Mountain Park was drugging us with.
I'm not exactly sure. You said something about your mom went to Rebekah, correct?
My biological mother was in Rebekah home, and actually, from what I understand, she was one of the girls taken out by CPS when they took the 50 out, and she convinced somebody in her home church to help her escape because my biological mom came from the IFB religion.
Okay.
Her stepfather was a pastor
okay.
of the IFB. I've gotten in touch with her sisters, and they were actually very happy about the boarding schools I went to.
Mm. So, and what schools did you go to?
I went to Mountain Park Baptist Boarding Academy.
Okay.
When that shut down, I went and lived at Agape for a couple weeks. So technically I was the first female student Agape had, waiting on the Martins to come down. And then I went to, it was called Refuge of Grace. Then it's the sister school to Agape. That's now called Wings of Faith.
Yeah, Wings of Faith.
And then 3 years after I escaped from there, I actually worked at Circle of Hope for a month because I was desperate to put a roof over my head. That's how me and Amanda got so close.
Okay.
Well, we closed, but yeah.
Well, I got you kicked out from coming over to Refuge.
But we were still friends.
Yes, we were, but we became better friends when we had to share a bed.
Okay. Well, I'll introduce you, and I'll just let you talk about what schools you went to, because you explained it a lot better than I did. So,
well, all mine actually connect back to the Rebekah home because the people that ran my first school trained with Lester Roloff.
Almost every school out there goes right back to Lester Roloff.
Yeah, I connected through Bethesda home and Rebekah home.
Yeah.
And then I'll explain it because I knew of Agape before I ever went there.
And I found out through a guy named Austin. He's been, I had him on. I don't know if you saw that podcast, Amanda, but he was talking about some other homes that I've never heard of called Ruth's Home of Compassion. It was also a Lester Roloff. Yeah. Yeah. A whole bunch of other ones. He kind of breaks down the history of what happened. We started with Lester Roloff.
I've
to the Weatherfords.
I've had some people tell me I need to listen to that one.
Yeah.
The pastor?
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched.
Very southern drawl. I mean,
yeah.
Very country. I think you said.
I didn't know Lester Roloff had an indigenous school until that episode.
Oh, yeah, the Regeneration Reservation. Yeah, it was in Arizona.
Yeah.
Oh, and I also connect thanks to Calvary. Because I knew the owners of Thanks to Calvary when I was a student at Mountain Park.
Okay. All right.
It's a lot of schools.
A lot of schools. All right. Well, heck, we'll just skip the introduction. That was good right there. Welcome to the Hammer Podcast. It's December 19th. Keep going, Aimee. Tell us, start from the beginning.
Okay, well,
go ahead.
When I was adopted when I was 3. And when my adopted parents got divorced, life went downhill. My mom had changed. Lots of things were going on at the house. I had tried to commit suicide when I was 14, and she found out and put me in a mental hospital. And they told me about a group home that I could go live at to escape a lot of things that were going on at home. Because there was a time me and my mom were getting in fist fights every day.
Oh, yeah.
Some of them were defending myself. Most of them were me defending myself. Because my adopted dad walked out on us and never really looked back until it was time to send me to boarding school. So at the mental institution, they told me that I could go to a group home where I would be like in school and I could still go to movies. I could see my friends, you know, that it'd be a normal life. And I was like, hell yeah, I'll go. If that gets me out of this shithole that I'm living in. Well, yeah, well, they drugged me up before we got on the plane. I knew I was going to Missouri, and I didn't care because I was just getting away from the hell that I lived in at home, because I struggled with being adopted and certain things my family told me that make me feel completely alone and unloved and not worth being there. So I was like, okay, let's go. And then we drove up to Mountain Park. This was October 12th, 2001.
Yeah, we drive up this long dirt road. And the first thing you go through gates, and there's like 7 houses to the right. There's a big house to the left. And then you pull up to the main campus. And it's this cabin-like thing. And you look to the left of it, and there's 20-foot barbed wire fence. And I looked and I was like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? I'd already seen girls walking around in these long skirts and could see the boys. And like, I noticed that the girls weren't allowed to see the boys because there were boys and girls there. There was always more girls than boys. I mean, we got up to 226 girls at one time, when might have been like 30 guys, because a lot of the girls, their brothers went to Agape.
Okay.
I know we've talked about the Kelsos before. I knew Kelsos at Mountain Park. I knew Kelsos at Refuge of Grace, and I knew Kelsos at Circle of Hope. Because Michelle was at Mountain Park. Maya was going to get sent to Mountain Park, but Mountain Park closed down, and she got sent to Refuge Grace when I was there. Okay, I'm skipping around. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So when you get to Mountain Park, they immediately separate you from your parents. And the girl, like, I was taken down into the dorms, and I had to sit with 6 girls that were telling me all the rules. And I'm looking, they're like, well, you can't talk about that. You can't talk about that music. You can't wear pants. I'm seeing these girls singing these like weird Christian songs while they're cleaning and acting so happy. And then I see this one girl, she had 8 people surrounding her at all times. Because come to find out later, she had tried to run more than once and had been restrained enough to where they just constantly kept 8 people with her. In case she tried to run again, they could immediately restrain and not have to call for help.
Oh, okay.
Well, so you sit down there for like 6-8 hours, however long it takes for your parents to sign over all the paperwork. They had special groups of girls, the ones that really drank the Kool-Aid, would go and give testimonies to the parents and try to convince them what a great place this was and how much God had changed their lives.
Did you ever notice how the testimonies, even with Rebekah girls, it's all the same for all of them? I was defeated. They always say I was defeated. I was defeated in sin and everything the world had to offer, rock and roll, drugs, all that stuff. You know, it's the same. It's the same thing every time.
Same thing. And God changed my life, and now I just want to live for Him. And I'm like, oh dear Lord, what have I walked into? Because I grew up with the different churches, and I never liked church. I would, pretend to go to youth group just so I could go hang out with my friends. So as soon as your parents are done signing the paperwork, your parents come down, say goodbye to you. And I remember begging my adopted dad, please don't leave me here, because I could feel something was just off about this place. And he just hugged me and turned around and walked away. Never even said anything. My adopted mom was crying, and then I didn't beg her because I hated her at the time. So immediately after that, you're taken into the shower bay, and you are stripped down in front of about 5-6 people. They examine every part of your body, and they have to delouse you So they have the special stuff to delouse. And then I remember thinking how crazy it was then. They had this bottle of stuff you had to drink. And they said it was dewormer because they never knew what situations girls came from. But it's not labeled. It's just an empty bottle, and it's this banana chalky stuff. You had to drink it, and you're watched the whole time in the shower. And that's when you start finding out the rules. Like, as a new student, you had to be with an orientation guide. So you couldn't be more than an arm's length from them. If you got more than arm's length, you faced getting restrained for trying to run. If another student was on that status, you had to ignore them. Like, you couldn't acknowledge these people. Your guide might have 2 or 3 students at the time, and you had to be like, well, hey, can you tell your new student to get her stuff off my bed? You're not allowed to talk to anybody without an orientation guide involved in the conversation or a staff member. They had a different level that was called single girl. That's when you are trusted enough to get off orientation and be by yourself. But that's it. I mean, you couldn't talk to another single girl without having an orientation guide involved. You couldn't have a legit conversation about anything in your past. There's no therapist. You have to completely cut off who you were, and you're not allowed to figure out how to process things that are going on. I was number like 146, I think.
So they were a bigger student, like Agape.
Yes. We got up to 226 girls at one time at Mountain Park.
Okay.
After I'd been there about a year, I'd played the game and I was just sick of playing the game, because you get saved, you do these certain things. If you have desires to listen to like rock music, then you're obviously, according to them, you never got truly saved because God takes all those desires away. You're going to hell if you wear pants, eyeliner, and anklet, if you have sex before marriage, if their version of dating was keep a Bible hymnal in between y'all and have a chaperone. And you had to be, the only way you could even look at a guy is if you were like staff or junior staff. Now, girls did find ways to get boys' notes, but there were never that many boys. I think the most it got up to when I was there was maybe 30. But interesting enough, Frank Burton, who preaches at Agape, he would come over to Mountain Park and preach. I actually have a Bible from Mountain Park that has Frank signature in it. We got their newsletters. So about a year after I got there, I decided to run. And that was a big mistake. It took 20 girls to get me down. I was held down for 8 hours on my pressure points by 16 girls as I'm screaming to Sam Gerhardt, F you and F your God, and this isn't Christian, because I've got a friend here that was there when I got restrained. She remembers it. She's over here cheering me on. They had a 300-pound girl sitting on my back. They were rotating people out on me because with 16 of them, they still couldn't keep me down. When I finally gave in after, 8 hours, pressure points, wrists, elbow, ankles, anywhere they could put pressure to cause pain, that's what they did. Yeah. Well, then I got basically carried into church. And I had people surrounding me in church. I had a girl sitting behind me, literally holding my hair. So if I tried to run, she could just jerk me back by my hair. It sat there for the whole church service holding my hair. I was frustrated because at Mountain Park, like a lot of these schools, your letters are read. So if they didn't like what you wrote in your letter, you had to rewrite it. And you had to write a page a week. And if you had it depended on the size paper. If you had like small stationery like this, you'd have to write 3 pages. So I actually have 3 years of letters I wrote home as a student, which I'm shocked on some of them, because I have one letter where I wrote home about my ugly dress that I got put into after I ran away. I tried to run. The next day, Debbie Gerhardt called what's called a powwow. And what she would do is bring all the girls into the school at the same time. If she was mad enough, she'd bring the boys in too. And she'd bring you on stage and completely berate you and make you feel as worthless as she could in front of the entire school.
Oh, that sucks.
They had this punishment that you got everything you own taken away and you got put in a dress from like the 60s. And it was like what would have been a prom dress back then. And you're not allowed to wear anything but that dress, hose, heels. You got 1 pair of culottes and a shirt for PE.
Oh, culottes.
Culottes. Which I never understood why they thought culottes were so discreet, because if the wind blew wrong,
you
could see everything.
Everything. Or if you're walking above on a bridge, anyone could look up and see everything. Yeah. Stupid.
Yeah, it never.
Culottes. Yuck.
Yeah, I saw something a couple of years ago where they were starting to come back in style, and I was like, I don't care how in style they come. I will burn every pair.
Never again.
Those are the ugliest things known to man. Ugly.
Ugly, yeah.
Oh.
Now, one thing I forgot to say is at Mountain Park, when you walk through the door, the front door to the front office, the first thing you see is a picture of Lester Roloff.
Shocker.
Because Bob and Betty Wills started Mountain Park. They started Mountain Park after a Bethesda home for girls got raided by the FBI because of, them taking the babies away from the girls. And Bethesda home was the sister school to Rebekah home. It's where all the pregnant girls went. Well, Bob and Betty Wills trained at Rebekah home. They went and worked at Bethesda home with their daughter, Debbie, and she married this guy named Sam, who had gone to Reclamation Ranch in Tennessee and then went in the military afterwards. I'm not sure how, I don't remember how they connected, but he was a paratrooper in the Army. And then there was the O'Briens, were another family that worked at Bethesda home. Well, when Bethesda home shut down, they moved to Missouri and started Mountain Park, and they wouldn't take pregnant girls after that. Well, they would brag to us about making the pregnant girls build the school, because as students, we did all the cleaning, we did the cooking. There were 3 ladies that worked in the kitchen that they were very sweet to us. They came from town, and then we had another worker that came from town. The school was in Patterson, Missouri. I mean, it's hard to get to because it's more out in the boonies than Agape is. It's literally in the mountains. You can't even see the nearest house from there.
Mm.
Well,
that's how they like it. That's how they like it.
Yeah, it was isolated. They would actually tell us stories they told us the story, and it kills me now, that this girl ran away and she got hit by an 18-wheeler because she ran out of God's will. I always thought that was a story that they made up, but it was a true story.
Oh yeah, it was. But it wasn't because she was out of God's will. That's not the reason why.
No, but that's what they would do. Like, you're going to end up pregnant and homeless and on drugs, if you don't do God's will, you don't follow the specific steps, because they teach an angry, legalistic God that's going to almost like he's sitting there ready to smack you down if you mess up. And they turn God into a weapon, because I don't know how many times I got saved there just to get out of trouble. I mean, I struggle with now, if I die, am I going to heaven or hell? I mean, is it even real? But because I got saved so many times, which one stuck?
Well, let's just say the hell that they teach us about is not even mentioned in the Bible. So
Yeah.
They would bring people in and tell us that hell was in the middle of the earth, and that's why earthquakes happened, was because hell was enlarging itself, especially like when the Haiti and the tidal wave
Right.
that killed all those people. I could tell you how they would teach that the thing moved, the plates moved because hell's in the middle of the earth, and as it gets bigger, it causes the plates to move. So and that's where hell is.
That's oh my god! Hey,
that's science.
You know, it's funny. I've heard that story before about hell being in the center of the earth. You know, and of course they always say that heaven and hell, once you go there, whichever one you go to, it's forever, right? Forever.
Yeah.
But if you look at, I don't want to get off too much on a tangent here, but if you look at evolution and the planets and science, the earth is going to basically get swallowed up by the sun in probably 5 billion years. That's a long time, but it's not forever.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen to all those souls in the middle of the earth when the sun completely demolishes the earth? Where are they going? I don't know. Just a little food for thought.
Yeah.
It's not forever.
It's crazy. Well, you know how there's down in the Mariana Trench, there's that smoke that comes up in the water? They would teach that was coming from hell. They would actually play tapes where supposedly these microphones were dropped down in the middle of the earth and people screaming. And I was like,
no, actually,
I was laughing in my head. You didn't dare laugh out.
They lied to you because I know exactly what you're talking about. That was done in either Antarctica, where they were drilling a deep hole for, I guess, for oil or some sort of a well. And that's when they heard it. They dropped the microphone down there. It wasn't the Marianas Trench. They lied to you. So.
Yeah. It was things like that I was just like, I remember sitting there going, okay, I have to pretend to believe this, because if they know they don't believe this, then I'm screwed. I'm going back on orientation. You'd get your schoolwork taken away. You know, most of us have to go get a GED, because even though we did our high school education, it was not accredited.
It's worthless. It's worthless.
I got mine. Yeah, it's worthless. They would take it away from you if you weren't religious enough. We had to memorize 3 verses a day and quote them every single day. Like, say it was Peter. We actually had to memorize the entire book of Peter. You'd have to quote 3 verses one day. The next day, you quote the 3 verses from the day before, plus your new 3, and it added on like that. If you didn't get all the verses for that week, you didn't get to watch the movie on Friday nights. Instead, you either sat there reading your Bible, writing your Bible, or listening to Lester Roloff tapes. And if you were one that really bucked the program, that's all you were allowed to do, was listen to Lester Roloff tapes.
Ah, fun. Lester Roloff sermons. The old hellfire and brimstone. You know, the thing is, I still listen, regrettably. I still listen to those, because Roloff has a website, roloff.org, and you can listen to 24 hours of it. Yeah. I don't listen to it all the time, but just to kind of get because some of the stuff he says is really, really out there. You know what I mean? And it's just some stuff that I could use for the podcast. That's all. It's got nothing to do with, I'm not going to sit there and go, oh my goodness, what have I been doing for all my life? Jesus help me.
Well,
it's not going to happen.
The message is he would preach on races. You know how, whites stay with whites, blacks stay with blacks, Indians stay with Indians. You don't mix pure races. And they were so racist.
Right.
There was a girl there that was from Florida. She was Cuban. So instead of us acknowledging that she was Cuban, we had to call her Mexican, because she spoke Spanish.
I remember he was always talking about watermelons too, watermelons and black people and stuff like that. I'm serious, he did. And
porch monkey was a term that was used there.
Yes. Also, Mexicans, he would call them lubricanos. is what he called them. Basically, it's greasers, but you call them lubricanos. Yeah, so he was racist. He was a racist guy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like, I always felt so horrible for the girls there that were mixed. You know, they're basically being told they're worthless and pieces of trash. And I never understood. I was like, you teach us to love everybody the same, but yet they can't marry in the same. Like, they have to marry within this, and this. It never made sense to me. It was actually found out that Mountain Park was drugging us with Thorazine and Melorel. We're trying to figure out exactly how they got the medicine. We're thinking it was either in our vitamin calls, because we'd have vitamin calls. And I'll never forget when I got out of the boarding schools and I bought a bottle of vitamin C. I was like, this is what vitamin C looks like? That's not what I took for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
I have a picture. I sent it to Amanda from when I was a student at Mountain Park. My eyes aren't even the same color. I can remember going, why am I going along with this?
You can tell
and not being
make down off of something.
I showed my doctor and he goes, you're Thorazine now.
Doors.
There are several girls like me. We have blackout memories. There were girls that were chosen to go clean staff houses. And a lot of us can remember going into the house. We can remember exactly how the house looks. And then everything goes black. We can't remember cleaning a house.
Kind of makes you wonder if they did that for their own perversion, so to speak.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder. I mean,
it does.
I had some memories come back. I can't really say anything because I have no proof. But it trips girls out when I bring up certain things. When I'm like, well, do you ever remember cleaning this specific house? And they're like, oh my God, you have the same stuff? I mean, one girl, I was talking to her about it and she started throwing up on the phone. And she's like, you just triggered memories in me that I didn't even know. And I can't say what they did, but the people that live at Mountain Park now, they will tell you something absolutely evil happened there. It's a Jewish family that they are trying to put good energy. They brought it up to us. They're trying to put good energy into the ground there because to balance out the bad energy. They couldn't walk through the dorms in the dark for 6 months. They would have to run through because the hairs on the back of their neck would just stand up, and it's hard to explain everything that happened, but you know, their favorite thing was to turn the students against each other. Like, I had a girl that we became friends. We got put on what was called separation, where I wasn't allowed to look at her. I wasn't allowed to be in the same room as her, wasn't allowed to be anywhere near her because we were lesbians, but we were just friends. If she was walking, we got put back on orientation. And I can remember getting thrown face first into walls because she was walking down the hallway. They would break up the cool groups. I mean, there were girls that did make it out when they ran, but the conditions that they came back in, they were literally carried back into the dorms. Cuts up and down their arms, their legs, their face, bruises everywhere. One girl was missing fingernails and toenails when she came back, and they were never the same. You could look in their eyes, and they were just dead. Like they had lost any will of their own. We never got to see what they did to them because it was always outside of the dorms. If they actually got out, they would blame the cuts on the razor wire fence because as girls, we were barely allowed outside. I mean, I've gotten my letters that, oh my God, we went outside today and I actually got sunburned. I'm not looking like a ghost anymore. There were no windows. in the dorms. You couldn't see outside. It was a privilege to go outside.
This is a true house of horrors, let me tell you.
Yeah.
It is. I've got pictures. The people that own it now, it's insane because it's got the same carpets, the same wallpapers. The dorms are still the same. They've got the same chairs that we use, same dishes. And so it's like a time capsule. And when I got there, I had been trying to get in touch with people for a couple months to let them know, hey, I want to come tour. This was my second time going back. Well, when I got there, I went and introduced myself to a lady, and her name was Mama Joe. And I was like, hey, Mama Joe, my name's Aimee Groves. I was a Mountain Park student. And as soon as I said that, she goes, go wherever you want, sweetie. The property is yours. Do what you will. And their faces kind of light up. And this other guy came up, and I introduced myself, and I was like, I'm a Park-Key. And his face lit up, and he smiled. And I was like, oh, you've met one of us before. He goes, no. But I've heard the stories about y'all coming through. Because every couple of years, somebody will go back to get some closure. Because there's nothing like walking through the front doors and walking back out free. Because we never went anywhere. I think 3 times we left campus in 2.5 years to go to a church.
Were the fence still there?
The fence is there, but they took the barbed wire down. That was one of the first things they did was take the barbed wire down. Because they found yearbooks in between the years that I was there and gave us some yearbooks. And they're like, we could see in the pictures that they did some evil stuff to y'all, because like the captions on some of the pictures are, this girl, she's finally getting to eat her fill. I wonder how much weight she'll gain this holiday. And just these smart ass comments captioning every picture of us. And they were like, we could see in the background the razor wire. And I'm like, they must have scoured this yearbook, because they could see the barbed wire fence. And if you're just flipping through, you don't notice it.
Yeah.
2 guys actually ended up walking with us, and we were explaining what these houses were for and when this house was built. Mountain Park ended up shutting down in May of 2004 because of all the lawsuits brought against them for the drugging. There was a murder there in the 90s. Yeah, 2 students killed another student there, and they somehow managed to stay open. They would pull the Lester Roloff move, and they would have the tour choir that would go up to the state capitol and sing and give testimonies. I know 2 boys that ran away. There was a river. They made it 7 miles downstream and ended up at a detective's house who ended up calling CPS. And about a year before they closed down, all these law enforcement came in and put us on lockdown. We weren't allowed to leave our beds. I had to get some medicine because I had really bad cramps, which is a funny thing now that I mention it. Most of the girls there would lose their periods completely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes. Amanda, you see, it happened to Rebekah, but all of them.
Circle of hope. Yeah.
Yeah.
I lost mine for 2 years. Didn't have one. I have some female issues now, but that's also a side effect of the drugging too, is to lose the periods. It's a side effect of Thorazine. Which they were drugging at Bethesda home too.
Yeah, and they weren't giving you Thorazine to clean those houses because Thorazine doesn't give you the energy to do shit like that. So,
yeah, I don't know. There was Melrose.
What'd you say, Amanda?
Well, I know a girl that.
Oh, I was just saying that Thorazine. They weren't giving you Thorazine to make you all uppity to clean their house.
Oh yeah.
So that's all.
Oh, okay.
Thorazine turns you into a zombie.
Exactly.
It's the quickest way to brainwash somebody, which they would brag about brainwashing. in church. They'd be like, y'all come to us with these dirty minds. So we put a little bit of soap in there and we scrub it clean and we get all that shit out of your head and we give you a new person. And I'm like, they're bragging about brainwashing because it is a cult.
Yeah. They scrub your shit out of your brain and they put their shit in your brain.
Exactly.
That's what they do.
Oh, yeah. You know, the KJV is the only Bible. Any other Bible is the wrong one. And everybody who wrote the NIV and things like that died from mysterious.
Yeah. And you know what's funny is now they have the new King James Version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's of the devil as well. Don't even talk about that.
Yeah. You know, Catholics are going to hell.
Oh, they're the whore of Babylon.
Preach that.
Yeah. Whore of Babylon.
Speaking of Babylon, I don't know if you ever heard it, but Jack Scott up at House Anderson preached a message about America being the Babylon in Revelation and how America was doomed unless everybody repented and turned to IFB ways. You know, and Jack Scott's now in prison.
Let me see. It's either because it's always the same two things. It's either taxes or some sort of sexual crime.
Oh, he's sexual.
Sexual.
There you go.
Child.
See? Not even an expert, and I know. It's always those two things, either something to do with taxes or some sort of sexual crime. All the time with these guys.
Oh, and he's tried to get a passionate release and it got denied. I remember when he went to prison, I was like, yes, another one bites the dust.
Good.
Well, is there anything I'm missing about Mountain Park, Amanda, before I start talking about Refuge?
I don't know. I don't know much about your time at Mountain Park.
Well, from what I've told you. I mean, just the tactics that they would use to turn you against your friends. I mean, they would have you restraining your friends, enforcing punishments. Weight was a huge issue. If you were overweight, you got put on a special diet. That I'm 5'8", and I'm well endowed in some areas. I got down to 150 pounds while I was there, which I look at it now. If I get to 165 or 170, I look like I'm on drugs. But I was always on the diet because I was overweight. Bo Gerhardt used to call me a fat cow. And Bo Gerhardt is, okay, so Sam and Debbie would run Mountain Park. Bob and Betty Wills ran Palm Lane, which was in Florida. It was their sister school. And the stories that come out of Palm Lane are worse than the stories from Mountain Park. It was a smaller school. It was a privilege to get sent there, but the girls that came back from there, they were so different. They were like dead in their eyes. They were robots. I mean, I know girls that went there that, I mean, the nightmare stories that I've been told, I'm like, God, they didn't even do that at Mountain Park. But, you know, we had to call Bob and Betty Wills Mama and Papa. We weren't allowed to call them Brother Wills or anything like that. It was Mama and Papa.
Yeah.
And you didn't dare tell Mama about the punishments Debbie Gerhardt put on you, because the minute Mama left, Debbie Gerhardt would do worse things. Like one girl, I know, they thought she was vain about her hair. So what they do, they bring her up in front of the entire school, chop her hair off, give her these 2 short bangs that stick straight up, and then tell her she's not allowed to look in a mirror.
Okay.
They would do things like that just to tear you down more. They would tell you how much your parents, you were so bad that your parents gave up on you and gave you to them to take care of. Well, I was a student at Mountain Park. It was 2 years before I actually saw anybody in my family. My adopted dad came up for 3 hours and left. First time I saw my mom was the day that I left Mountain Park and went to Refuge.
So,
well, Agape.
Or did you go to Agape first or Refuge?
Agape.
Okay.
Because
so you went from there to Agape.
But the people that run Yeah, I think I spent one night with my mom, and come to find out years later, the schools were telling her how terrible I was. They had her in fear of me, that I would kill her if I was ever alone in a room with her. And I spent 5.5 years in the school. When Mount Park got shut down, I was so excited. They had told us the day before. They're like, oh, but they told us after church. They're like, oh, by the way, come Friday, all of y'all are going to be gone. Some of y'all are going to other schools. Some of y'all are going home, but we're closing the doors to Mountain Park. And, there was a lot of crying because that's all you've known. You're not allowed any TV, any music, any radio, nothing from outside those four walls and your paces and your King James Bible. That's it. Your phone calls are listened to, your letters are read. You've learned just to put Bible verses in your letters to take up the space that was required. Let's find out half a chapter. There's half my letter right there. And I look like I'm a good Christian preaching to my mom and dad.
So you go to Agape. How long were you at Agape?
It was a couple weeks.
I
lived with the Cleveland. I went and my mom took me over, my adopted mom took me over to Agape. We toured the place together. I remember going, oh my God, there's a lot of guys to look at here. And I'm not at Mountain Park. I can see folks easier.
Wow.
But then it was so embarrassing, like having to walk through the guys. And, there's like 150 guys. And I called it the Red Sea.
Yeah, that's what
because they would just park and look down at the ground because they weren't allowed to look at you. But you could feel these guys looking at you.
Yeah.
But we called it the Red Sea because they had to let you through. And there's actually a lot of guys that remember me because I was a new girl there and I was somebody new to look at.
Yeah.
I lived in Cleveland for a little bit. And then I lived, once more girls from Mountain Park started coming, Brian and Kirsty Clemenson took us over to what was training house at the time. It was supposed to be a halfway house where the guys aging out of the program, they could learn to, get a job and things like that.
Right.
Because the Martins were taking over a school in Michigan that had been shut down because of child and sex abuse. Go figure.
Go figure, right?
The people that run Ben W. Martin have actually been in their school has been in 5 different states. And it's been under 3 or 4 different names. Because it was at first Refuge of Grace Independent Girls Academy when they were in Tennessee. Because they started in Tennessee. They moved to North Carolina. From what I understand, talking to people, they had issues in North Carolina because the church took over the finances and gave a salary to Bud and Debbie. Well, they ended up in West Virginia. Not sure what happened in West Virginia, but they moved to Michigan to take over the school that was attached to Grace Baptist College or Grace Baptist Church, run by John Jenkins, who's on their board still. But the school that was running there for troubled girls got shut down because of child abuse, sex abuse. I know a girl that was there through all the shutdown who ended up at Refuge. Well, they moved to Missouri in like June or July of 2004. And it sucked because it was Mountain Park all over again. I thought it might be a little bit different because there was less girls, but there was, I think, 7 of us at first. 6 of us were from Mountain Park. And we went to church at Agape. Every church service we were at Agape. For a while, we ate meals at Agape. They would send the cereal over to Refuge. I remember eating the cereal with the bugs in it that the boys talk about. We had the same thing. We ate the same foods. Wings of Faith. They're now called Wings of Faith. They did the restraining. They brought Agape staff over to help with the restraints.
My mom.
The only difference, Amanda's mom used to come help with the restraints. She came and worked at the school while Boyd was working at Agape. me and Stephanie actually got pretty close because she was the only one that could help me with my chemistry because, you know, nobody at these schools has any type of legit education.
Yeah. My mom's a chemistry major, so they would use her for all of that stuff.
Yeah, and so I was the only one that ever even made it up into chemistry for a long time. There was a girl that came in, and a few weeks after she came in, it was found out that she was pregnant. And she stayed. She's actually starting to speak out now. And it's stupid the things I remember that they did to her, but she had her belly button was pierced. And as she got bigger, it would rip. And they would give her hell about Neosporin and a Band-Aid. They didn't want to give her anything because, well, you shouldn't have got your belly button pierced. That was a worldly thing. Amanda remembers there was certain instances where as women, we were worried about her because, you know, when you're pregnant and you're bleeding, there's a big problem there. And they wouldn't take her to the doctor. I mean, she'll tell you now, they wouldn't, even when she was on staff and had her child, they wouldn't let the child's father talk to any of them because he wasn't saved. So they blocked this child's father from being involved in his life because he wasn't a Christian. They actually tried to adopt her child, and they would, like, that's her story to share. But they did a lot of crazy things. They teach that women in both of these schools, that women are literally there to clean house, screw your husband whenever he wants. If your husband cheats, it's your fault.
Yep.
You know, it couldn't be that it's the man's fault. You know, you weren't giving it up enough. It didn't matter. You know, you were there to obey your husband, that he is in control of your entire life. Even if it goes against God, if your husband says do it, you do it.
Yeah. Didn't you have to do the How to Be His Helpmeet book there?
There was, there was To Train Up a Child. I'm trying to think, because we would get all the stuff. I forgot about that. We would get the stuff from the women's conferences.
Yeah.
And yeah, from Cindy Hiles. Cindy Scott. We read a lot of her books.
Yeah.
Blue Denim and Lace was the biggest one. That was written by Jack Hiles about how to be a wife.
Well, you know, when it comes
Debbie Martin.
When it comes to
Go ahead.
Women, I mean, this is the reason why they're like this. You know, women are worth half than men and all this other stuff is because of the book they're reading, King James, where it tells you can sell your daughter to slavery. Women are whores, all that stuff. That's where they're getting it from.
Yeah. Well, I never understood. And my thinking, I mean, there's girls that'll tell you I was treated different because I never truly conformed. I got Amanda banned from the school. I got Nicole Hall banned from the school because I asked her, do you really believe in wearing pants? But I remember thinking, okay, if women are so low, you know, because a woman can't speak in church, she can't preach. You know, Joyce Myers is going to hell because she's a woman preacher. They cannot stand her. Billy Graham,
Paula White.
I was thinking, do what?
Paula White.
Yeah.
Yep.
They would joke about Tammy Faye Baker, which, I mean, who doesn't joke about Tammy Faye Baker, though?
Right.
But I remember thinking, okay, if women are this low, why are they the ones teaching Sunday school and teaching the next generation of preachers? Because
it's the kids. That's why. The women are in charge of the children.
Right, but I remember thinking, why are they there to mold the minds of the next generation at the most important ages, but yet when it comes to being an adult, there's no rights, because women have no rights to that religion.
No, women stay home, barefoot, pregnant in the kitchen. The guy goes, dips his prick somewhere else. That's your fault. You're right.
Yeah, it's your fault. You didn't keep the house clean enough. You didn't put your makeup on. You gained too much weight, you know, because you're supposed to be this, you know, you might be a circle that has to fit in a square container. and you got, or a square that has to fit in a circle, and you can't do that because each person is made differently. And they teach you that everybody's created in the image of God, but then they teach that you must fit in this certain mold or you're going to hell.
Sure.
I don't know. I feel like I'm missing stuff.
And the thing
So
is, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna ask her, what was like the biggest difference between Refuge of Grace and Mountain Park?
Mountain Park, we could wear our own clothes. Refuge of Grace was uniforms. And like if you broke a rule, there were the jumping jacks. Or they did more workouts. Like Mountain Park would do workouts. I actually was one that I had to run so many laps that I was dragged in order to finish my laps, because they would drag you if you didn't do your workouts right. I mean, at Mountain Park and Refuge, it was you eat everything that's on your plate. I remember at Mountain Park, there were girls that would have to eat their own vomit because they would be forced them. The skinny girls would they'd be on milkshakes 3 times a day plus food, and they had to eat all this stuff because they were so vain that they were skinny. But yet there were girls. I think
that happened. That happened at Bethesda as well, I believe.
Yeah, and you do workouts until you threw up. There's one girl in particular, she didn't get to go on a home visit because at Mountain Park and Refuge, you have your on-campus visit, you have your first off-campus visit, and then you if you're following the program enough, you can go on a home visit. But you can't go on a home visit till you've been there a year. You can't talk to your parents for at least 30 days. And I look at it now as a parent, I could never send my child somewhere where I wasn't allowed to talk to them for a month.
Yeah. Exactly.
Because what are they doing to my child in those 30 days?
That should have been a red flag. Now, Refuge of Grace, did they also drug you with Thorazine as well?
No. I can actually remember Refuge of Grace. I don't have the blackouts like I did at Mountain Park. I could tell you without a shadow of a doubt, there's no way a girl could accuse Bud Martin of anything sexual. If Bud Martin was in a room, there was always at least 3 to 4 women in the room. But it was weird because we'd have to model. No, it was. They were very protective.
Okay, all right.
Anybody being alone with him, it was very. I mean,
even when I was over there, I rarely ever saw him, and I would stay in his house while my mom went and worked with the girls. It was very rare that he was even around. And that was always interesting to me because if you look at Mountain Park or even Agape, the husband and the wife of the owners are always together. Kathy Clemenson and Jim Clemenson were always around the boys. But it was different with Bud. Bud was never, he was just not there. It was weird.
But about new uniforms, we'd all have to put the new uniforms on and model them for him.
That's what we
You see, I think that's probably the reason why that they had girls surrounding this guy, maybe because if he got alone with one of the girls, he probably would have done something. So, maybe way back when he did something, and now it's okay, we better stop it.
He has heroin charges from Florida before he ever started the school. He's got heroin charges on him.
Okay.
Which is hilarious, in my opinion, because...
Why? Why is that hilarious?
Well, I mean, you're going to try to help girls get off of drug addiction stuff, possibly, but you don't even have the courage to tell them that you went through that. And
Well, no. The more I thought about it, the more he would talk about his old life and how he made all these bad decisions, but he turned everything to God. Okay, and this is totally because I'm ADD. My biggest thing against these schools is the lack of mental health, because there's no mental health. There's no mental illness. They preach there's no mental illness in the world. If you think you have mental illness, you have a Jesus problem. I came from an institution where I was medicated, and I was pulled off my medications cold turkey. There was no weaning. They say they wing, they don't wing. It's that. The minute you're there, you're off of them.
Well, because
there's no. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, because all you need, Aimee, is Jesus. That's all.
Yeah.
Let Jesus.
Everything.
Jesus gonna come into your heart, and He's gonna take away all that bad shit out of there. Get it out. Give you a whole spirit, and you're done.
Yeah, but if you still have those issues, you didn't get Jesus in your heart. You didn't truly ask Him in.
Of course.
And
of course, if you still had those thoughts, feelings, or whatever, yeah, you close the door on Jesus. You close the door on Him. It's your fault. It's always it's almost like I said at another podcast with a couple of agape guys. It's like battered women syndrome. You're constantly getting hit and smacked. Yes, and all you're saying is, well, yeah, he does hit me, but he's still a good guy. I'm sure he'll change.
I deserved it because I didn't obey the right way.
Right.
And there's women that literally think like that.
Yeah.
I remember after CPS came in at Mountain Park and investigated, Debbie was telling us what we were always called whores. There, we were all whores. They wouldn't let us outside very much because we might hump a fence post. But Debbie. Yeah. Debbie, I remember the day she looked at us and said, if you were 12 years old and sexually assaulted, that was your fault. You knew what you were doing. You invited that man into your bed. Things started with me when I was in 5th grade, which a lot of people don't know. And I'm like, it wasn't my fault. I was too scared to say no.
Yeah.
Because I was too scared. And I had to keep it a secret because what that person might do if it was found out.
Exactly.
And the thing is, sexual assault or rape, it's all about power.
Mm-hmm.
It's what it's about.
They would teach there was no such thing as rape in marriage when there is.
Yeah.
They would teach that as a woman, you had to give it to your husband whether you wanted to or not.
Yep.
There's a guy, just to let you know, there's several... To kind of give you the backstory real fast, there's several Baptist denominations, right? You got the regular Baptist, independent fundamental. You also have one called Historic Baptists. There's a guy, you might want to check him out on YouTube. His name is Jason Cooley, okay? And he's talking about this one thing about what Aimee was talking about. There's a Bible verse in there that says women are supposed to be subservient to the man and everything. And he goes, well, what if the woman doesn't want it? He goes, well, he can take it.
Yeah,
he can take
they teach that.
And you hear the guys in the audience go, "Amen." I'm like, "Are you serious?" This guy just said
people.
Yeah, he just said you're allowed to rape your wife, and the guys are going, "Amen." Fuck
Crazy.
you, man.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Fuck you.
Yeah.
They would teach how to beat your children.
Yep.
The verse, spare the rod, spoil the child. They would teach you used a dowel rod the size of your pinky. If it was bigger than your pinky, then you could get caught. You did it on their butts. You did it you beat your child in places to where the bruises wouldn't be seen, so the state wouldn't come in. But if somebody reported it to the state, they took that as God's trying us because we're so faithful and following Him that He's testing us to see if we'll really give in or not.
They're Job.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're Job. I remember them teaching, we don't follow the laws of man. We follow the higher laws, the laws of God. And I remember I would get in trouble a lot because I'd be like, well, right, you teach me that the only difference between man and women's clothes back in the day was the type of material. So why does it matter if I wear pants or not? The virtuous woman turned her dress into a pants outfit to go out and work. I got put on silence. I got put on silent. Well, I wasn't allowed to talk. Wasn't allowed to ask to use the bathroom. It didn't matter if you peed on yourself. If you were on silence and on the wall, and you end up peeing yourself, you got made fun of. Even though they would see that you had to go to the bathroom and wouldn't let you go.
And like we said, Aimee, it all goes down to Lester Roloff, because I remember Lester Roloff in one of his sermons says the only law that we follow, and he pulls out the Bible and says, is God's law.
The Bible.
Yes.
That is God's law.
Yeah. Okay. So we follow God's law exclusively.
The Bible says, They didn't like me because I remember I said, but the Bible says render unto Caesar what is Caesar. So doesn't that mean you have to pay your taxes and you have to follow the laws of your land because the Bible tells you to?
Sure.
They didn't like that, and I'd get put on silence. I wasn't allowed to talk because I would use the Bible and be like, because I studied to prove them wrong. Yeah. You know, they would always say, study to prove thyself approved, a workman of God. I was like, I'm going to use this against you because what you're teaching makes no sense.
Well, you know how they get over that by saying, that's, you know, somebody else's interpretation. This is how we interpret it.
You took that out of context.
Yeah, take it out of context, exactly.
Well, the thing that I found funny always was they would always preach on convictions. It's your conviction. But then they would push all their convictions onto us, and we couldn't be like, this isn't my conviction. This is your conviction. They would get so pissed off at you for that. And it's like, well, just because you can't wear pants and not look like a man doesn't mean I can't wear pants and not look like a man. But they just stupid.
All right. So I was at Refuge of Grace from May of 2000. Well, I went to Agape, then I went to Refuge of Grace. I was there till 2006, January 31st. And I remember the day so well because I actually graduated in 2005. I walked in May. I finished my paces in August. And actually, this is where Agape screwed my family. If Mountain Park had stayed open like 2 or 3 more weeks, I would have graduated a year early. I had 6 geometry paces left in order to graduate. I get over to Agape, and Jim Clemenson or Brian Clemenson, one of them two, told me, "Oh, we're adding 12 credits to you in order for you to graduate because what you're doing as college prep over there isn't our college prep." So I got all these things added on, and they were telling my parents that I never finished my schoolwork and that I was still a student, even though I was a staff member. I was supposed to get paid $100 a month and free ice cream on Fridays. Woohoo! Free ice cream on Fridays. And I got paid $100 a month because I got room and board. Now, mind you, I'm working like 18-hour days. At Wings of Faith, they do lock the girls in the dorms with magnetic locks. The windows are nailed shut. And one of the staff members that was at Wings of Faith, I had been a student with at Mountain Park. I'd been a staff with her at Mountain Park. And then I was okay going to another school because I was like, screw it. My parents don't love me. They're going to ship me away, whatever. Until I found out that this girl, Amber, was going to be a staff. And that's what I was like, fuck my life. Because she didn't drink the Kool-Aid. She may as well put an IV in her with how crazy she went. I mean, the guys remember her for her hats. I mean, she would have fit in perfect with the Honeybee Quartet. Okay. I mean, she would listen to Lester Roloff tapes all the time. She sang nothing but Lester Roloff songs. She ate like you know how he ate all crazy healthy? Yeah. She ate the same way.
Do you remember any of the songs that Roloff sang?
Oh God.
That she was singing?
We had one there was one song they would actually have us singing. I don't know if it's a Lester Roloff song, but it would be Revelation, 21:8, 21:8. Lighters go to hell, lighters go to hell. Burn, 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 burn.
No, that's not a Lester Roloff song, but I remember one in particular. That was called. The Lester Roloff was called. It was called "Little House on Hallelujah Street." Did she ever sing that one?
Yeah. And then we had a medley that was called the Roloff medley. It was like 7 different hymns.
Yeah.
I still catch myself singing it every once in a while, and it's still the Blood and the Lighthouse. Like a lot of these like old-timey songs. I mean, she would go to sleep at night, falling asleep, listening to Lester Roloff tapes. Oh.
I'm sorry about that.
I said that would give me nightmares.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know what
she actually...
But that tells you right there how deep these cults have gone into your mind. You know what I mean? I mean, just a really hard mind fuck. I mean, it's just, I mean, after all these years, you could still sing word for word some of these songs. It's just.
Oh yeah, as the deer, and mean, but we weren't allowed to do what was called scoop. Like if you you had to hold the same note in your voice. You couldn't go like, because that was scooping and that was worldly. And I was just like, what the hell is this? You couldn't listen to any music that had a beat to it or drums, because that's what the people were listening to when Moses came down from the mountain. And they were naked and screwed each other because they listened to drums. And I'm like, okay. It always threw me because they would teach grace, but they would teach the Old Testament laws and not teach the New Testament God. They taught the Old Testament. I'm like, you people backwards.
Yeah.
Well, Jesus died, the Old Testament was thrown out.
Yeah, but all the laws that they would teach and everything didn't revolve around the New Testament. It revolved around the Ten Commandments and what went wrong in Exodus.
When Jesus died, the New Testament was thrown out, and that's why they preached from the...
Yeah, but would tell you that the Old Testament was thrown out, that there was the New Testament, but they would teach the Old Testament. They would actually completely contradict themselves.
I know.
Well, you know, Jesus said he didn't come to get rid of the law; he came to fulfill it. So all those laws from the Old Testament still apply to Christians.
Yeah.
No lobster, no shellfish, no mixing of fabrics, all that stuff.
No, that was all taken away in the New Testament.
No, it wasn't.
Peter had the dream, but if you actually study the Bible, we were given a whole new 10 Commandments, because in the Old Testament, it was if you commit adultery. Yeah. In the New Testament, if you look on somebody and Paul or Peter had the dream with the sheet coming down, where God was telling him that he could eat all the foods again.
Drugs do that to you.
Yeah, drugs do that to you.
Well, because Paul was on the island of Patmos, is where he was at, and Patmos is known for its opium plants. So he was smoking something.
I tell people, I was like, God doesn't care if you smoke weed. He tells you in the Bible to use every plant. And I'm like, if you should so happen to light this plant on fire, you might have some happy outcomes.
That's right.
Like, I will use the Bible against you. But, so I was being kept it. They were still listening to my phone call. On my 18th birthday, that morning, I went to Debbie and I told her, I'm 18 now. I want to call my parents. I want to go home. And she told me, and she's like, well, you won't graduate. I said, I don't care. I want out. And she's like, no, wouldn't let me call my mom. Starts feeding my mom all these lies about me. So I was basically being kept against my will because I did not want to be there, but I had to pretend like I was okay being there.
Yeah.
Because they were still listening to my phone calls, even when I was a staff member. Because she doesn't know it, but I would throw things out on phone calls on purpose to see if they would get brought up later, and they always did. So I was like, okay, I'm not even safe trying to make plans with my parents to get out of here. So I went on my first home visit in January 2006. I left in October 2001. So here, 5 years later almost, I'm just now leaving this cult for the first time. And I got to see my family and everything, and then my parents made me get back on a plane. And people have asked me, well, why did you do it? I was like, you don't understand. I was so conditioned at the time just to obey that I obeyed. Even though I didn't want to, I didn't know if I had another choice. 2 weeks later, I'm trying to help the girls. 2 weeks after I get back, I'm trying to help the girls get along with this certain staff member that I was telling you about, because she was hard to get along with. She was the one, if you stepped a toe out of line, boom, give me jumping jacks. You had to be perfect. And I was trying to talk to the girls about how to get along with her, because I've known her since, I've known her since she first got saved. Well, she goes and tells Debbie that I'm trying to turn the girls against her. in that I'm telling them not to listen to her and not to do this, not to do that. Debbie proceeds to chew me up one side and down the other, never even asked for my side of the story. Well, that's when it clicked in my head. I'm fucking done. Because I am the only one that truly cares about these girls. Because I've been in their shoes. Oh, the girls remember me as staff. They remember that I wasn't the hard ass. I actually cared, and I tried to show them how to make it through the program. Yeah. Well, something snapped in me that night, and it was my job to lock the door. So I locked the door, and I went and unlocked every other door in the house, unlocked every window that I could find, and turned the keys in. Just in case they found something unlocked, I'd have another way out. And I stayed up till 3 o'clock in the morning, and then I ran hitchhiking across Missouri. I got picked up by a lady, and she prayed over me. Got picked up by another couple who, oddly enough, they didn't recognize me, even though they were bringing animals to us to eat. They raised rabbits, so they would slaughter rabbits and bring them to the school. And I made it all the way to like St. Louis with them. In St. Louis or Jeff City. And when we got there, I looked and I was like, thank you. You just saved me from Refuge of Grace. And they were like, oh shit, what did we just do? And I guess they called the Martins and told the Martins what happened. They came because they were like, well, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. I don't care. Anything is better than being there. I was sick of the psychological, made to feel like shit, and that I had no voice and that I would never have a voice because I was a woman. I mean, the girls got more, like the boys got a lot of physical abuse, but I promise you the girls had the psychological abuse way worse. Because, I mean, you're told your rapes don't matter, they're your fault. You're being taught that you're supposed to get married to this certain kind of guy. And you can't say no to him. So you're teaching these girls, oh God, I'm supposed to marry a guy and he's allowed to rape me with whichever way he wants. Because whatever your husband wants is okay. I'm supposed to have like 7 children and homeschool them and be this perfect wife. And I'm not supposed to question anything for the rest of my life. Because that's God's will for me. Well, I've always been a fighter. Always. I never, yeah. Well, I end up back at their house, and I'm getting on a bus to Houston with my stuff, and my adopted father tells me, 5.5 years later, my adopted father tells me, oh, well, I hope you can find a convenience store that will let you sleep in front of it when you get here, because you'll never spend another night under my roof. My adopted mom tells me I'm not allowed to stay at her house. I find out I called my aunt, and she told me she'd come get me. And then I found out her and her husband were having issues. Her husband is my adopted dad's brother. And I didn't want to cause problems for them.
Yeah.
So I found this guy on the bus, and I'm scared to death because you've been to Houston. The bus station ain't the greatest area.
No, it's not.
And I was like, oh, great. I was like, oh, great. I'm not getting off the bus in Houston. I'm not getting, no. Well, I meet this guy, and he tells me about this magazine crew he was going on. And all I could think was, I can make money. It'll put a roof over my head. So I get my bus ticket changed, and I end up selling magazines door to door. Don't tell my family what I'm doing. Because they already told me I couldn't stay with them. I'd never really seen them in all these years. So why wouldn't I believe them? And I call them like a week later, and I'm like, oh, just so you know, I'm in Louisiana. I ended up going to Shreveport, Louisiana, and then we went to like Georgia. And I called them when I was in Georgia, and I was like, just so you know, I'm doing this. And they're like, oh my God, we were about to call the FBI, and we were so worried about you. And I remember telling them, fuck you. You told me I had no home.
Yeah.
Well, I spend the next 3 years trying to put a roof over my head, trying to get out of magazines because horrible things happened to me while I was selling magazines, going into strangers' houses as a naive girl just coming from a cult. Well, I get so desperate to put a roof over my head that I knew Amanda's parents had started their own school because they had talked about doing it. Well, I found their number and I called Stephanie and I was like, hey, it's Aimee Fancher. You know, I've lived this life of sin the past 3 years and I'm trying to do right and get in the military and I'm trying to do God's will and I really need some help. And I convinced them to take me in. I thought I knew what I was walking into. I was blindsided a little bit because I remembered Boyd. I knew he was always a hard ass, but Stephanie was always nice at Refuge.
Okay.
And then, so they buy me a plane ticket. They stop and buy me clothes. And it's so funny to admit this. I snuck in a can of dip and I snuck in a cell phone. I was 21 years old and I just had this feeling. So I snuck it in my bra because they can't really legally make me strip down. I'm 21 years old. And then I get there because I knew I wasn't going to be allowed to smoke. And I've been smoking for 3 years. I was smoking 2 packs a day right by then. So I see Amanda again, and I was like, hi, I missed you, because I always loved Amanda. Well, they end up not having room for me, so we end up sharing a bed, and I got handed the school and became the principal with just my diploma from Refuge Grace. And Boyd starts giving me these weird vibes. He reminded me of my previous rapists, because I got raped a few times during those 3 years I was gone. And I remember he had this thing for one of the girls. And she could tell you too. She remembers that he'd always try to get her to go do something by herself with him, and I'd always show up because I didn't want them to be alone. I tried to really care for the girls. I mean, I would let them, as bad as it is, they trusted me. Not knowing what all I'd been through the past 3 years, they let me be alone with the girls. And I'd let them listen to music. I'd let the girls who weren't allowed to talk to each other. I found out from a lot of the girls that they were really sad when I left. They could tell that I really cared about them. And the householders started trying to ban my recruiter from coming to the property and keep me too busy to enlist in the military. And then Stephanie starts telling me I'm only going in the military so I could be a whore and have a different guy in my bed every night. And this one didn't earn me any graces, but I remember looking at her going, well, maybe that's what you did in the military, but that's not for me, honey. And they tried to tell me how I was trying to seduce Boyd. And I was like, what are you talking about? Well, the shirt pin to where your collarbone makes that little circle, your shirt can only be 2 fingers. Well, if you bend over, you're going to see down a shirt. Well, that's how I was trying to seduce him, and my kick pleats.
Oh, jeez.
I pinned them.
Well, I was gonna say we were told that Aimee was kicked out because she was trying to seduce my dad. That's what all of the girls were told at Circle of Hope. So that's why Aimee left. I left because my recruiter found me a stranger that would take. No, I'm telling him. Oh, I ended up getting out because I was telling my recruiter what was going on. My recruiter hated coming out there because it felt so weird and cult-like, and the way the girls would react to him, because at all my schools, I promise you, all the girls would do this. A new man walked into the room, instant, shoulders up, head down, in a protective mode, because you didn't know if that person was going to be safe or they were going to be somebody that was looking for a reason to give you a workout, to make you suffer, just to prove his masculinity.
and that he was in control. And it was an instant. And he's like, why do they react like that? And I'm like, well, because of this. I can't remember his name, but he helped save me. He found me a firefighter that I went and moved in with. But even when those 3 years in between the schools, as I was going door to door, I started telling my story. And I got to stop people from going to Agape, from going to Refuge of Grace. They would tell me, oh, we were just thinking about sending our son to this school. And I'd be like, hold on. Because I made a Facebook when I was 19 for the sole purpose of finding other students, because you weren't allowed to really talk about where you were from. You could say like the city and state, but that was it. There was no exchanging of phone numbers, exchanging of addresses. They would actually tell your parents, don't let them be around former students because it's just going to bring them down and they're going to go back down a bad path. They're scared for us to join together because of what is happening. They tried to prevent that, but now we're finding each other. I've spent years looking for people. And I'd find their stories and I'd go through websites and I'm like, look at these red flags. You can't talk to your kid here. The letters are read. Phone calls are recorded. You can't see your child for 4 months and you may not even be able to see them then because it depends on how they're acting. And I'm like, they're going to tell you all these different things. They never told my mom that I tried to run and that they restrained me. My mom still doesn't know I was restrained. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, when I got restrained, I lost feeling in these 2 fingers for 3 months and was never allowed to see a doctor because that was God's will for me for trying to run. That's how God was punishing me. I couldn't even wash my hair right.
Wow. I'm kind of speechless, Amanda.
Yeah.
I had no idea. But
what was the real reason you left Circle of Hope, Aimee? You never actually got that part.
Because I couldn't stand being in the club anymore. It was worse than Refuge of Grace was. And I wanted to get in the military. I felt like I was getting trapped. And if I stayed much longer, I would never get out of the cold. Because they were slowly taking things away from me. And I mean, I wasn't even allowed to drive.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, you had to get permission from Boyd to learn how to drive, and that was up to him if you got to learn how to do it. And I can remember your dad beating the shit out of Julian one night.
Yeah.
And going, oh my God. And I mean, Amanda, I stuck a cell phone in, and Amanda had told me she wanted to leave. I can't believe I didn't say this part. She had told me she wanted to leave. So I had found her somewhere to go. And somebody that would take her in. I don't know how, but your parents caught wind of it. And her parents told me that if Amanda left, they were going to file kidnapping charges on me because she was 17. And I was like, fuck, man, I want to get Amanda out. I want to get all these girls out, but I don't even have anywhere for me to go. I can't face kidnapping charges. And part of me wishes that I had faced those kidnapping charges back then, because maybe it would have exposed some things earlier.
Well, you had to do what you had to do.
And not as many girls.
You know.
I know.
Yeah, it wouldn't have
That's
been.
what I tell myself. It doesn't take the guilt away.
It wouldn't have gone
And
down.
then her parents kicked her out a few months.
Wait, what?
And then your parents kicked you out a few months later.
Oh yeah, not even like you. When did you you left in 2008 sometime, and I got kicked out like January 2000.
No, 09.
Yeah.
I left in January. I was there January 2009.
Okay, so then I literally got kicked out like not even a month after you left.
Yeah. or you couldn't get in contact with me because I was in boot camp, because we lost contact. Yeah. And I would find ways to find her once I got out. And actually, at one point, she stayed with 2 different friends of mine.
One friend. I've only stayed with one friend. I talked to Loper.
Stayed with Loper too.
I did stay with Loper.
Okay, Loper was going to come get you. Yeah. But she stayed with a guy, friend of mine, that I was actually in love with at the time, but I couldn't live there because of certain situations. I was on the other side of the country. But he took her in. And I mean, we lost contact for what, like a year or 2, and then we picked up right where we left off.
Yeah, we would talk every once in a while. Yeah, we would be talking every once in a while because you were in the Army at that time, and so like I had no real way of contacting you. But we would keep in contact when you when you found me, and then you'd go off, and we wouldn't talk for a little bit, but then we started talking again. That time area, it's like blurry to me.
That was a crazy time for all of us because I was homeless trying to figure out how to make a home. I'd even even when I got out, I got out of the military during basic due to some medical reasons. And I was homeless and I couldn't take care of her, and I wanted to, but I couldn't take care of me. There was a time period before I went in the military that I even offered my adopted dad. I was like, I'll make a contract with you and we can get it notarized and make a legal contract that you just give me 6 months, because I didn't even have an ID. And I couldn't get an ID without an address. I couldn't get an address without an ID, and I couldn't get a job without an ID. My adopted dad told me I was lying and to go get a job, and told me I was crack whore and all this horrible stuff. Well, I'm staying with this guy in Virginia when my biological dad finds me on MySpace, and I find out my entire life was a lie. My dad saved my life. He's my best friend now. I'm actually going to his house here in a couple hours. And through some of that's where I found out about my biological mom, going to the Rebekah home, and I was like, oh my God, so this is a generational thing now. This goes back decades, and I prove it. Her family was excited that I went there to these schools. They tried to turn me against people. They never once looked for me because they were like, oh, well, when God wants you in our lives, he'll bring you to us. And I remember thinking, okay, so that's how much you really cared about me, that you couldn't even be bothered to lift a finger to see if I was okay or not.
That's what they do best.
Yep.
They shun you and they make you feel unworthy, I guess for lack of a better word.
I was at a point where I didn't care if I lived or died, because before my dad found me, I was like, if I died, there'd be nobody who even cared. Go away. What? Not right now.
Anyway, so
my daughter, sorry.
It's all right. We spent a few more minutes and then we're going to have to end the podcast. But so
I feel like I rambled a lot.
It's all right.
I don't think you rambled.
No, you were good. You were good. Oh, you say something, Amanda?
Oh, I said I think she kept on track.
Oh yeah.
I don't think.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So how are you doing now, Aimee? As far as your life?
I have an amazing husband. I have 3 beautiful children that sometimes I feel like I don't deserve, because, and my husband doesn't get it. He's like, I've stood by you for 9 years. We've been married almost 9 years. And I'm like, you'll never understand it, because until 2009, till September 2009, nobody ever stayed with me. Everybody abandoned me. And until my dad and you, I was like, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop where you get sick of me and my issues, because I am in therapy. I have mental breakdowns sometimes because some of the memories, they just come back, and they're back in a way where I I could be like sitting here talking to somebody, and sometimes the memories will just take over to where all of a sudden I'm not sitting on my porch anymore. I'm back there. I can smell everything. I can feel everything. You know, I've been diagnosed with CPTSD and some other things because of the schools.
Yeah.
That I struggle sometimes. Amanda knows because I call her when I'm struggling, or I just send her a text like, I'm going ghost. And she's like, no, you're not. For me. I'm doing a lot better. I've been in therapy since March, and it's helped a lot to actually find a therapist who listens and tries to understand. I mean, she does her own research on the schools, so that way she can help me better.
And you
Being
know,
on medication helps.
and I'm sure people who watch this who probably are affiliated with Roloff, because I've had Agape's looking at my stuff too. I know they are. I know they are. But they're probably going to say, "Oh, look at that! Her life is better. See what the Holmes did." No, you don't get to own that.
No,
No, they
You don't
do
get to
not.
own that.
Because
No,
my life is better in
because of you.
because
Because
I
of
have
you,
tried
Aimee.
to abandon every
Yes.
touch me and fight for who I really am. You know, if they could have helped me with the mental illnesses I have, because I was diagnosed with stuff before I ever went there.
Yeah.
That meds, getting on my meds in March the way I was supposed to be, because it was the hardest thing for me to be okay being on meds. But with some of my diagnoses, meds are required. And now that I've taken them for this long, I'm like, this is all it took to get me okay. You know, I have night terrors that I'm trapped back at these schools, and I'm trying to get out and get to my children because I'm really protective of my children, because I don't want them to know 1 ounce of the pain that these
so-called Christians.
people that pretend to be godlike, these so-called Christians, when there's nothing Christian about them, try to do. I mean, I have trouble walking into a church because I have flashbacks of what the hateful preaching. I mean, it was the hellfire and brimstone preachers that would teach about you going to hell were the best preachers. I remember Alan Domley. He was on Agape thing when they went live.
Yeah.
He actually broke a pulpit at Mountain Park. And we would make jokes when Alan Domley was coming about when his vein, the vein up here and the vein here, would start swelling and throbbing while he was preaching. Because he would, I remember people getting so filled with the Holy Spirit at camp meetings, they're skipping around. And I'm like, what is this? They don't believe in speaking in tongues, but yet we go to camp meetings and people are speaking in tongues. And I'm like, that ain't even tongues. That's gibberish. And they've got somebody translating, and I'm like,
wait, what church did you go to?
This is all show.
Speaking of tongues isn't Baptist. That's more Pentecostal.
Yeah, it was actually what Refuge of Grace does, and I can't believe I didn't mention this. They tour and go to different churches to raise money for their school and take up love offerings and show the difference that Jesus is making in these girls' lives. You can look at the pictures on their website. All the girls are smiling. They're only smiling because if they don't have Jesus, which means punishments are coming. Schoolwork's getting taken away.
Yeah.
It's always smile if you smile because you have Jesus. Well, they would take us and parade us in order to get these love offerings. And I was like, God, they're making so much money off of us.
Yeah.
Because not only are our parents paying tuition, that's exorbitant. I mean, the tuition right now for Refuge of Grace is $3,200 a month. And I think they have 19 girls right now. So you take 3,200 times 19. That's what they're bringing in. Yes, they have to pay staff. But I pulled some records where 1 year, they brought in almost $800,000 in 1 year. And they only took $80,000 between them them for a salary. Well, of course they only took that much because the school pays all the bills, all the food, all this and that. That's just pocket money for them.
Yeah.
And
they don't pay their staff. So even, they don't.
They pay their staff just enough to say that they pay them, but not enough to leave.
Exactly.
Your video's frozen, Aimee. You're making a really weird face.
Okay. Uh-oh. I think it might be because I'm having to use the hotspot. Is it moving yet?
Not yet.
I was going to say that preacher
Somebody called me on my phone.
Oh.
The Alan Donnelly preacher she mentioned, his sister actually came and worked for Agape as a staff lady. Lorraine Bobbitt was her name. But yeah, he was a Hyles Anderson preacher.
I remember.
What? Lorraine Bobbitt?
Oh, wait, no, that's...
I was going to say...
Okay, no, it's not that. It's Bobbitt something, but I don't...
That's the wrong person. Amanda. Yeah. I mean, I know what you want to do to the Clemensons, but still, or what anybody wants to do to the Clemensons, or even Julio. But that ball grabbing guy. I'm sorry. Julio.
I've never met him. He wasn't there while we were there, but I've heard stories of him, and he's not a good guy.
I've never met the guy, and I hate him already.
Exactly. Yeah.
I've heard so many stories about him.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that better now?
Yes. Oh, frozen again.
Okay.
But it's okay. There you go. You're better now. So, Aimee, tell us very briefly before we end the podcast, if there are any parents that are watching this that are thinking about sending their kids to school, please inform them.
If you want a relationship with your child ever again, don't send them there. Because they will look at you as you betrayed them and you abandoned them, because the school presents one image to the parents. They are professional con artists. They know what to show a parent that is desperate to save their child, and they won't show what goes on behind closed doors. They won't let you know about the restraint room at Agape. They won't let you know that they make your child not allowed to talk, that they will make your child rewrite letters until they are deemed good enough. I mean, they will come up with excuses when your child tries to reach out to you. They will tell you your child's lying and that they need to be there longer. I mean, look at the red flags. I mean, you can't talk to your child for 30 days. Everything is monitored. Yes, there has to be some rules put in place because we are at-risk teens. There's no therapy. If your child has issues because of something traumatic that helped them in their childhood, that happened in their childhood, they're not going to ever be able to address that issue. They have to pretend that issue doesn't exist. There is no help. There is, let me turn you into a robot for God. If you want your child to be better, there's different options out there. Your child will feel like you gave up on them if you
there's nothing you can't do for your own child that these schools will do. These schools will just destroy your child. You can do a better job than these schools.
Definitely. And I'd like to add that the PACE program is complete horse shit.
It is.
It is not.
You learn how to cheat your way through without getting caught.
It is not accredited.
Nope.
And I went on the website, and you might as well have your kids watch Archie comics or read Archie comics because it's the same thing. Yeah. It's not accredited. You have to pay
to get it accredited.
To get it accredited, but there's no guarantee that it's going to be accredited. So you're basically taking a gamble there. So you're better off just putting your kids in a public school. Let them learn life.
You know, the fact that they advertise on Wings of Faith website an escort service because your child may not come willingly. they advertise that they work with an escort service. That is legal kidnapping because they will terrify the crap out of your child. And
well, you kind of caught me there for a moment because you said escort service. I'm like, oh, so that's what they're doing.
Finally, not that kind of escort service.
The truth comes out finally. They're running an escort service. Can you imagine an escort service? The girls come to the hotel and they're in culottes and these shirts with the poofy. No, send them back. Send them back. Send them back.
We joke about that, but there is a school that's another Lester Roloff school called Freedom Villages, and they would actually take Freedom Villages. They would actually take kids to a hotel and hire up senators and government officials they were sex trafficking their kids.
Way to go, Baptists.
Right?
Way to go. All right.
Yeah, way to go.
Aimee, thank you for being on. This has been
thank
tremendous.
You for listening and letting me. It feels good to get my story out.
And Amanda as well. Thank you for being on. For everybody out there, she has a YouTube channel, Exposing Circle of Hope. Yes, go over there and subscribe.
And I'm willing, if any parent sees this and has questions and comments on this video, I'm willing to talk to any parent about what I went through, whether it's for a boy or a girl. And if there's any Wings of Faith or Refuge girls that see this, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, so's Amanda. You reach out to one of us, even if it's just through this, I will help you.
Right.
And be there for you and love you like you don't know, because I know your pain and your struggles.
And if that's not feasible for them, I have a phone number at the top of my channel page. Text me. I'll make sure that Aimee or Amanda get the text. So there's ways to get them. So, but yes, she has a YouTube channel, Exposing Circle of Hope. Go subscribe to that. Please subscribe to this channel and to help support it. So we're going to go ahead and say adieu, ladies.
Thank you.
Yep.
Bye.
All right. For the Hammer Podcast, I'm Jason. You take care of yourself. You take care of each other.
All right.
Bye,
Thanks.
ladies.
Thank you so much.